Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those on the West and the Central Time Zone. And those watching in Europe and Israel, I want to wish you a good evening. Again, today we have really a very serious and a very significant program. We have, as well as Major General Nadav Padan, who's going to be addressing us what's happening right now in Khan Yunis and Rafah and communities like that, what's happening with the troops up north. We as well have David Lubin. And David Lubin is someone who's been a supporter of FIDF for a number of years. David, his daughter, Rose Lubin, many of you may have heard that term. She became literally, amongst international Jewry, a hero, someone that we all look up to. Rosie was tragically lost her life after being a hero on October 7th, and we'll hear that story. She was attacked in the old city of Yerushalayim, a member of the Mishmar HaGvul, the border police, protecting the holy sites in Israel, the Jewish holy sites, the Muslim holy sites, the Christian holy sites. And we lost her at the age of 20. And we're going to have an opportunity to speak with David, to learn from David, to hear from David, the experience that they had, the unthinkable, the worst nightmare that any parent could ever have. And we're profoundly grateful to David. Really is always given of himself to FIDF and to the FIDF family for addressing us. David, if we could just introduce you for a minute or two. There's a video after that you wanted us to see, and we want to show that video of Rose before we actually hand it over to you. David, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Steve. Thank you for allowing me to speak to everyone today. And I just want to reiterate what Steve said, and that our family's been very involved in FIDF and even before Rose was in the Army. But this was an organization that meant so much to Rose that she came to a gala here in May to speak. And Rose was not one who liked to speak, but she truly understood the importance of FIDF, that she knew that was where she needed to be. So as a family, as the Jewish people, as just people that want to be on the side of right, we appreciate everything that y'all do.
David, before we get into Rose's life and into the life of your family, is it possible, Yehuda, if you could share first the video with everyone at this point?
I serve in Magav, which stands for border guard, even though what I guard is not a border. I am essentially a combat-trained soldier specializing in anti-terrorism with the authority of a police officer. Magav Yerushalayim's motto is, generations dream to arrive to Jerusalem, and we have the honor to protect her. There are generations of my family who could have been here today if there was an Israel during the Holocaust. I feel an obligation to them to fulfill the opportunities they didn't have. It's our duty to watch over the Jews who are living the dream of walking to the Kotel on Shabbat.
David, if you could share with us the story of Rose's life, the story of your family's life in Dunwoody, Georgia, and the suburbs of Atlanta, and her first connections to Israel and the lifelong passion she had of moving to Israel and defending the Holy Land.
As you mentioned, we grew up in Atlanta. Initially, we were in Toco Hills, is where Rose was raised. And our family was always very connected to Israel. It's always been a very important part of our family. And I always explain to our kids about the Holocaust and the need for us to defend ourselves and stand up as a Jewish people for the rights that we have. When Rose was 5 years old, her Zaidi took her to Israel on her first trip. And when she got there, she said she didn't want to leave and she didn't want to come back. And we had to kind of, put the carrot in front of her and say, Rose, we'll bring you back. We promise it's going to happen. And she got on the plane and she came back. But it was about a year and a half later, she realized she hadn't gone back, and she started calling her Zaidi and saying, Zaidi, my dad's not taking me. What are you going to do about it? So then I started getting the phone calls. And by the time she was 8, I was back to Israel with her. On that trip, I saw this little girl who was making this connection to the country that was exceptional. It was like watching someone's eyes open up and see a whole new world. And when we came back to America, after having to drag her back, is a better way to put it, she started telling everyone that she was going to move to Israel and fight in the IDF. In fact, she would meet other kids and, on the playground, and that would be the moment of like, let's be friends. And she would always preface it with, we can be friends, but when I turn 18, I'm going back to fight in the IDF. So just be aware of that. And it wasn't even like a passion for her. It was just who she was. And I think it was clear that she understood at a very young age the need for us to protect ourselves and the need to have an army and to stand up against not so much the injustices, but the reality that the world that we live in doesn't really accept us sometimes, and that we have to fight for that, unfortunately. And we've seen it here in America, and we see it in Israel, that anti-Semitism is something that's prevalent. I was talking to a gentleman this morning about that, and it's very unfair. But Rose got that, and Rose took action in her life. I mean, it was unusual. We got a story where there were kids in the street that were picking on a little girl because she was Jewish, and Rose went out and Rose fought those boys, and some of them were bigger, and we'd get knocks on the door. We got one knock one time, and this gentleman and his daughter or his son, I'm sorry, were saying, your daughter beat up my son. And the boy had tears in his eyes. And we're going, what are you talking about? She didn't, Rose, you can't do that. But he was picking on this girl because she was Jewish. And that happened another time too. And the second time we just said, we got a problem here, but maybe we also have something that's good as well. So Rose got it at a very young age that protecting the Jewish people was critical. And it was something that she was going to continue for the rest of her life.
David, have been by Dunwoody High School, where they have the white and blue ribbons. They have posters of Rose. Rose was, as any of us who knew her, she was larger than life. And I mean, just a fascinating combination. Here she was a cheerleader on the high school cheerleading team, and she was a member of the wrestling team. I believe it was even the men's wrestling team that she was. Yes. That's a combination you don't see too often. Not to mention she could sing Adele as good as anyone out there.
Yes. We've kind of said she has these opposing characteristics where, one moment you have this very sweet, gentle, kind girl, but she was also strong like a lioness. And she would fight. She wasn't going to allow people to do something wrong and not stand up against that. And that is, when I think about her legacy and what all of us can take from Rose, what all of us can take from her is that we have to be willing to make sacrifices in life. We just can't sit on the sidelines anymore. It's gotten to the point that's not going to work for us. She went to Israel to do the greatest thing, to serve, to protect. And she had to give the ultimate sacrifice, which was her life. That in itself should just be an example to every one of us, that something's wrong. Something is wrong right now in this world, that we as Jews have to accept the fact that we live in a country where our youth can be taken from us just from serving and protecting by terrorists. The fact that we have to accept the fact that people in Gaza, for example, had to live their life previously with bombs being dropped on them every day. That has got to change. We've just grown accustomed to building bigger walls, adding more security, and we do this in America too. We do it in America every day. Every day when I go to my JCC or I go to my synagogue, and I have to have an armed guard out front, or I have to, have my child go through 3 checkpoints just to go to school. It's the same thing that we've gotten accustomed to, is just accepting that. And Rose was not one that would accept that. She would not accept it. She would fight for it, and she was willing to give her life for it. And all these children right now, or young adults, whatever we call them in Israel, are doing that every day. And they need our support. They need our love. They need our kindness. They need everything we can give to them, because they're fighting against that.
David, if I could ask you to share 2 dimensions of Rose's life. Her experience with Garin Sabar, the soldiers drafting together as a group, living down on Kibbutz Saad in the Gaza. And then if you would share with us the experience that Rose had on October 7th, really how she became a hero to that community and what her story was there.
So her connection to Saad really grew when she, left. She left her old pond, and she was in love with her old pond, and then she was going to go down to Saad, where she'd never been before. And I remember getting the congratulations note that your daughter's been, accepted to Saad. And then I Google searched where Saad was, and I said, Rose, you're going to Gaza. What is going on? And she said, Dad, it will be fine. Everything will be okay. And the moment she got there, she fell in love with the place. I mean, it is a beautiful part of the country that most of us haven't seen. It's rolling farms and people that are a part of agriculture, and it's like the bread box of of Israel. And everyone down there was so kind and happy and had a great attitude towards life. And she just flowed right into it. And she became connected with the James family down there, which was her host family. It was a family of, 4 kids, the parents, and a dog. Well, Rose came from a family with, 4 other siblings, or 5 of them, and a dog, and bunch of dogs. So, she went right into that family, and they fell in love with her, and she fell in love with they all fell in love with each other. And it was just this molding of a great family together. And Rose, Rose was a part of them as much as they were a part of her. Now, on October 7th, we got a phone call, her mom did, and I guess it was immediately when the bomb started dropping. And Rose said, Mommy, I'm in the bomb shelter. I'm fine. We're under attack. Everything will be okay. And an hour and a half later, we got a phone call that said that I've got my gun, I've got my uniform, and I'm going to guard the gate. And we didn't really know what it meant at that time because we were all sleeping. We woke up the next morning, of course, and realized what was happening. And, that day was a very, very difficult day for me. I never felt this sense of just my stomach had just dropped to my feet. I didn't know what to do or how to even, live that day because we were so scared. What we found out was that Rose, like you said, was a hero that day. We know of one instance, her boyfriend, she saved his life. He told us when we got there, he said that Rose saw Hamas, knocked him down, and the bullets came flying and his life was saved. I heard from multiple people that Rose had met a paratrooper there. In fact, we met the paratrooper that when he came to Saad, Rose met him and took him to where the landing sites are supposed to be. And he said they were under fire and she had this sense of bravery and took him there. And he was shocked because Rose was only about 5 feet tall, but she had this presence about her that was very, very powerful. The following, when we were sitting Shiva, a man came to me.
People at Saad shared with me that while she was in this gun battle with Hamas, her and a number of other men, they were totally outnumbered by Hamas, she was opening and closing the gates. The people from the Nova Music Festival who were fleeing the Nova Music Festival, in the middle of a gun battle, she's opening the gates, letting them in while she's taking hits from Hamas.
Yes, 100%. She was manning this gate. So as they came, she was bringing them in, opening up the gate and letting them in. I talked to a gentleman today from Saad who told me that they found maps, and I never knew about this. He said we found maps that showed where Hamas was planning to attack, and he said that the gate that they were coming to, that was their main focal point of attack, was Rose's gate. And I never knew that, but he said they found that evidence and they were shocked. But he also expressed to me that the group there, their militia group that protects them, were very hesitant about Rose. But they said that Rose just looked at them and said, I didn't come to Israel to sit around. She said, this is what I'm trained for. I'm going to protect my kibbutz. And they just all kind of said, okay. This little girl, they said, okay, we're not going to stand in your way. And she showed them that day for 14 hours straight with no water, no food. She guarded that gate as well as anyone would have. With her life, she was there to give it at that moment. She was a real hero. But it was shocking, and I want to let everybody understand this. She sat behind the gate that day and she fought. She didn't go outside the gate. But when she left the gate, and this would be the next day, her commander came to get her to go to work. She had called me when she got on her way back to base, and I heard in her voice this sadness, this loss, this almost like a part of her had been torn away. And I asked her, I'm like, Rose, what happened? She said, I saw it. And at that moment, I understood what she saw. She saw all the death and the destruction, Steve, that had happened. She saw what Hamas had done. She saw the bodies. And a part of her was it was taken away. And that's what happened that day. Hamas took a part of us, and it hurt us. It hurt us in a way that we, I don't know how we'll deal with it, but we're going to have to figure out a way forward.
And if, and I apologize in advance, if I could take you to a different point, 4 weeks later, if you can share with us how you were notified of Rosie being killed, what happened, and particularly as you go to Israel, the experience you have with a nation of people that you may never have met them before, but they felt that you were their family, what you did for them, what they did for you and your family. If you could share with us, because I think it's very powerful and very important for our listeners to hear this.
So it was 4:30 in the morning that the consulate was knocking on the door of our house, and we were sound asleep.
The Israeli Consul General from Atlanta.
Yes, yeah. And I was awoken to that, and I came downstairs, and I think as I was coming down my stairs, it hit me that moment of this can't be good. And I came to the door, and I was like, who are you? Who are you? And I saw a man in a kippah. And our front door, since we have young kids, doesn't have a thumb. You have to have a key to unlock it. And I had to go find the key. And I didn't want to open that door. I knew at that moment what was on the other side. I did not want to open that door because I knew what he was going to tell me. I got to the door, and I opened the door, and he told me, and I said, she's hurt. And he's like, no, she's gone. And I just said, what do I need to do? And he said, we got to go to Israel. I said, okay. And I'm divorced from Rose's natural mother, and I knew at that moment that I then had to be the person to tell everyone. I had to tell my children. Of course, I had to tell my wife. And as I did that, it was very clear that our life would never be the same, and it hasn't. But it was also clear that the people that were around us at that moment cared for us in a way that I didn't know. I didn't know it existed. Between the FIDF coming in, y'all helped. The military, Israel, had people around us. Even here, the consulate played a big role in helping us, Israeli consulate, and they kind of picked us up and they carried us. They lifted us up, and they carried us from America, to Israel. And you were there too, Steve. You came to the airport to be there with us, and I'm forever grateful for that, because just your presence there with us made us realize we weren't alone. But once we got to Israel, the military, Magav, met us, and they were there, and they said, your family, we're here for you, and we're going to protect you, and we're going to mourn with you. We're going to tell you stories about Rose. And they did that. And we didn't really have to do anything. We just had to be there. And at first, it was everyone that was kind of giving to us that was lifting us up. And as the Shiva process happened, because of course you saw the funeral with the 15,000 people that we didn't know were there. Once we got through that part and got into Shiva, we started lifting up the people there. And it was very powerful to see people come to us, and they were crying, and they weren't crying in a way that, a person cries at a funeral. They were crying that they had lost their own child, like that Rose was a part of them, that our love of life and our passion for life, that every one of these children is a part of Am Yisrael. And they showed us that, and we lifted them, they lifted us, we cried, we told stories, and it gave us a clear understanding that her life was not lost in vain, that there was a purpose to her life, there was a meaning to her life, that all of these soldiers that have given their life, they're giving it for a reason. They're giving it for our freedom, and everyone there in Israel, they get it.
David, so you're saying 15,000 people came to Rosie's funeral. And then I understand there was a massive tent set up in Yerushalayim, And people from all over Israel came. People had never met you before. Some people had never met Rose before, to be comforted by you and your family, just to share in your grief.
Yes, every day 1,000 people approximately, Steve, would come, and they would line up. And for about 10 hours straight, this would go on. They'd come into the tent, 75 people would sit down, and they'd all want to know, why did she do this? Why did she come here? That was their big, they couldn't comprehend that this girl would leave Georgia, where she had all this opportunity, a beautiful home, a beautiful life ahead of her, that she would leave, come to Israel, and be willing to give her life. And I would explain to them that she came there because she understood what was happening, and that she felt the need to serve. And then they would cry, and we would cry, and they would hug us, and this would go on and on all day. It would probably have gone on all night if we hadn't set times. I'm not kidding. I think people would have continued to come. But the Israeli people, they have this sense that they have to show up. They have to be there. They have to show they care, because it's genuine. It's real. And I was told by many people there that our blood is now their blood, and I know that that's real. And I think sometimes in America and in other countries, we lose that understanding that we're all one blood. We are connected. And unfortunately for us and our family, it took this tragedy to have that connection.
Please feel free not to answer this question. Rose was the oldest sibling. They all looked up to Rose. The impact on the kids.
So this is important, because we have to understand that Israel gets it. They do. They get it. They actually have, and part of our bereavement packages is that they pay for up to a year for all the kids to get therapy, our entire family. And they're helping us through this, because all of them are in therapy and they need it, and they get to go and they get to talk about their sister. It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It is extremely hard. I mean, last night, her youngest sister was with a bunch of friends, and they're trying to have this special weekend. And she called me, I guess it was at 9 o'clock. She said, "Dad, I'm sad." She said, all the girls, they played a song about Rosie. Not a song about Rosie, but they played a song called Vienna. It was a Billy Joel song that Rose loved. And it hit her. And she called me, and she was crying, and she was sad, and we talked through it. And I explained to her, it's like, we're going to live with this for the rest of our life. We've lost a part of us that will never come back, Lily. But we have to learn how to live with the grief and not let the grief live us. And that is the message that all of us are taking into our lives. We have to go forward. We have to be there for each other, but we have to also ask for help when we need it.
I can tell you, a couple of the FIDF missions, we've gone to Har Herzl, to Rose's grave, just from looking at the things that were left there by people who visited that grave. It seems like that there's a constant stream of traffic of people who respect Rose, admire Rose, had heard her story, seen videos of her, whether it was the Fox Atlanta, whether it was FIDF videos, whether it was multiple videos. And you just get the sense that the impact that she had on so many people, those who knew her and those who didn't, was something that if someone would live 150 years, they wouldn't have that kind of an impact.
Yes. But it's for the right reason. You have to kind of understand that Rose, it's very unusual for someone to die and have left everything in order. And she lived that way. She lived a life that she had closure on everything. She didn't have bad relationships. And it has come out in her death. People see that. They get that. They see that what she believed in, who she was, how one day she could be, a soldier, and the next day she could be working at a thrift store, helping women with trying to find the right clothes to wear and helping them with their image, their self-image, I mean, I got so many stories from people that talked about how Rose helped them in life. I think I told you one story about how Rose, there's a girl in her unit who was suffering, from depression. And Rose met with her and talked to her because she noticed it, and she told her to try smiling. A simple thing, just smile. Try smiling every day. And that girl said that that changed her life. And she owed that to Rose. I mean, there were countless stories. One, I'm going to tell a story your daughter told me, if that's okay. She told me that there was a unit, they had to meet with their unit, and they were talking about what do you do with a soldier who won't do what they're supposed to do. You know, that he or she, they're waking up in the morning, they're sleeping in too long, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And they went around the room, and everybody was saying, you know, we should be hard on him. We should tell him there's consequences. He's part of a unit. He needs to work harder. Why should I have to do your work? And they got to Rose, and Rose said, I think first we should go sit down with him and ask him how he's doing. How he's doing. What's wrong with him? You know, what's really happening inside of him? And she saw people that way. She saw that all of us, you know, life's not easy, and all of us, you know, need some help sometimes. And there might be a reason why we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that kind of leads to the fact that there is a level of us needing to support each other that way. You know, that we need to do that. And Rose got that, and it shines in her life. And I think it's shining forward in her death that people are seeing that she was a hero, not just a soldier with a gun hero, but her life is an example that we can all learn something from on how we can lead a better today, a better tomorrow. You know, live as better Jews, all of the above.
David, thank you. I know this is not easy, and we apologize if we pushed and probed too far with the questions, but we're incredibly grateful to you, to Stephanie, to Robin, to the kids, to the extended family, to Rosie's grandparents on both sides, and just how, you know, you as a family have been role models, you know, and as you said, people come to comfort you, and you and your family have comforted others. We're just profoundly grateful to you, and we look up to Rose as a role model for all of us.
Thank you, Stephen. And this is not, you know, we don't want to be here now, but this is a time that the Jewish people, we have to come together. And if I can talk about Rose and it helps people see that and get it, then I will do it here. I'll do it there. I'll shout it from the rooftops. Because as a people, we're at a pivotal point, and we can't fail.
Yeah. David, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Those of us who are participating in the Zoom, who are in the Florida area, David very graciously has agreed to address our Palm Beach. We're going to be having a signature event in North Palm Beach, and David is going to be our featured speaker there. You'll have a chance to get to meet David, to engage, to interact with David. And David, again, we can't thank you enough for sharing, for giving us an insight. Wishing you and your family just a meaningful and a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'd like to turn to Major General Nadav Padan, who's going to be giving us an update and analysis of some very significant things that have been happening since the last time we met. Major General Padan, thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm speechless after this discussion that you have about Rose. And just to have in mind that we have over 500 soldiers like Rose that gave their life for our life, for the life of the Jewish people. And it's amazing what this generation show us. I mean, the way that they carry and the way that they took responsibility for our future are really thing to salute to. I mean, it's amazing to see this young generation how they act, how they took responsibility. I really admire their journey over the last 130 days. Speaking about the details, I would say that there is nothing near the south. I mean, the operation in the area of Khan Younis continue. Preparation to move south to Rafah continue. There is a challenge in Rafah, has been mentioned several times, that we have to deal with over 1.1 million refugees that moved from the north part of the Gaza Strip to the south, and that's a huge challenge. The big challenge right now, the focus of the system right now, deal with what's happening at the north. We said several times that it's a fragile situation, but I must say that because we understand that this friction will continue as long as the war in the south will continue, the area or the mistake that could be made are ones that could take us to a full war situation, although both sides doesn't want it. And although that it's been published at the New York Times today that the Iranians don't want a full-scale war and trying to control their proxies, the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah, we don't see it, but probably someone from the paper saw it, some correspondent saw it. What happened during the last few days is that both sides, Israeli side and Hezbollah, tried to push a bit the extent that the root of the game, I would say. And it's very close to a situation that there will be no way back. Very close. We are touching the threshold of war on a daily basis. And we saw what happened in Kiryat Shmona and in Sfat over the last few days, and that's the main challenge right now. So, as you can hear and see, the IDF moving to the north division, getting ready to welcome a full-scale operation there. Hopefully, we won't get there, and I still optimistic about the chances to find some kind of political agreement that will take us back to the 1701 that we had after 2006. It's not a good agreement, but it's less worse than a full-scale war. That it's not exactly our first priority right now in Israel after the 130 days war in the south. We have to understand it's not only about the soldiers that are fighting in the south, it's about our economy, our relation, our ability to support the effort of the U.S. and others to extend the access of the Western world in the Middle East. And the first step will be to create normalization with Saudi Arabia, equivalent to what we all know as the Abraham Accord. So that's our main goal. If I have to generally speak about how Israel could win this war, is by having those accords, by extending and increasing and strengthening the access of the Western country at the Middle East. That's going to be the success, because generally speaking, it's a war between the access of Russia and Iran, partly China, I would say, against the access that led by the US. And for us, it's significantly important to be at the strong side, at the right side, the one that share the same values as we share. So without destroying the amazing story that we just heard, without destroying the amazing braveness and the glory of those young generation, I will stop with the details and remember what we're doing here and what exactly we are fighting for. And really, again, how proud I am and lots of old general and leader from the IDF about what those young generation are doing in Gaza Strip and the spirit and the motivation to win this war. It's really a thing to be admired.
General Padan, if we could discuss one question you may or may not be able to answer because of its sensitivity is a military question. And then the second question is a discussion about some of the things that we're doing in terms of PTSD, wounded soldiers, etc. The first question, the strike that took place on the Northern Command that killed a female soldier, that seriously wounded another soldier, mildly wounded 6 others. That strike, which is a very, very strategic place, was that a function of the Iron Dome wasn't able to get that rocket, that missile? Was that potentially a precision-guided missile that was used, a very sophisticated missile? That a missile like that got through to the Northern Command. If you could give us a certain sense of assessment analysis on that.
So I cannot, as you can understand, get too deep into the details, but I would say it's a function of both. It was a different kind of missile, a guide missile with optic warhead that can actually change course and adapt to things or things that should be changed or should be fixed at the system of Iron Dome. Well, speaking about Iron Dome, we have to remember, and I stay with this kind of general perspective of this question. It's not about simple technical ability of a missile. It's about the way we are operating the whole system, the way that we are operating the radar, the way that the radar speaks to the system, the managed chain. All of them have to learn what happened in Sfat and be prepared to welcome those kind of missiles. The system have the ability to tackle them. We just have to learn those mistakes and fix it. As I mentioned, it was a combination of both, but I'm sure, I know, not only sure, that the Air Force right now is studying what happened, and as far as I understand, they're already ready to welcome those kind of threats from the north. Regarding the second question about PTSD, I would say that, I mean, if you ask the doctor, the first wave of PTSD, are we going to face the first wave in about a month from now? Around 3 months since the trauma. It's definitely obvious that all the soldiers and lots of civilians that were the South and the North exposed to trauma. Some of them will be able to deal with it by themselves. Others will have to have support. When we're speaking about others that will suffer from stress disorders, we're speaking about thousands of soldiers and civilians. And what we did over the last few months is working with the health committees, the hospitals, the head of the health in the IDF, try to figure out how the FIDF could support and help Israel be prepared to deal with those challenges. And we are running actually 2 programs right now. One with the IDF, which is a resilience center. We're helping the IDF building new resilience center in Netanya. And since the building will be able to welcome those veterans and soldiers that suffer from PTSD, we help the IDF offering a temporary place right now. They just started about 2 days ago, and it's going to be fully operated at the end of the month. And we're working with Sheba Hospital, which is the biggest hospital in Israel, to extend the rehab division, the rehabilitation division in the hospital, and be able to deal with thousands of soldier veterans, in that case, that suffering from PTSD, not only in Sheba Tel HaShomer, the center of the country, but also through Batei Lochem, through the Association of Wounded Soldiers, in other 5 places all over Israel, from the north, from Nahariya, to the south, to Ashdod and Beersheba. So we'll be able to support veterans all over the country, which is significantly important because those places didn't have the ability to support PTSD over the years, that dealt only with physical injuries. And that's a huge dramatic message and change for the veterans that suffer from PTSD. And as far as I understand, we'll have to deal with around 27,000 soldiers that we have to deal with.
You said 25 to 27,000, you said?
Yeah.
Yep. And the therapist...
That's a statistic. I mean, the number could be bigger than that.
The therapist that for this network throughout the length and breadth of Israel, the 6 centers that are being established, they'll be trained by Dr. Mickey Pollack and his team, who, in terms of their reputation internationally, in terms of their reputation domestically in Israel, are really at the cutting edge of post-traumatic stress, particularly military post-traumatic stress. They'll be the ones who will be training literally an army, a legion of therapists to give the soldiers what they deserve, the best possible treatment that they can receive.
Correct. I mean, the project in Tel HaShomer deal with 3 efforts. One is to treat the soldier with the veterans that suffer from PTSD. The other is to establish a research place that develop cat aid treat, use the high-tech technology of Israel, recruit everything that we have in Israel to support those amazing young men and women. And the last thing is a training center that will train medical doctors, social workers to deal with counter PTSD. And this knowledge going to be developed in Shiba Tel HaShomer and spread all over the country, as I mentioned, through the Batei Lochem from Nahariya to Ashdod. It's the center and the knowledge will grew up in Tel HaShomer, led by Professor Pollack, as you mentioned, Professor Amitai, and other state-of-the-art knowledgeable professor that deal with counter PTSD for years.
So to those just participating, what the general is sharing with us, it's really threefold. There's the early detection, which is something that we're funding right now. Each battalion is being taken out, being brought to Ashkelon, Givat Olga. There's a resilience center, which will give therapy to those who are still in the army who have not been discharged. And then there's going to be a network of therapy centers under the guidance of Dr. Mickey Pollack, where therapists will be treating between 25 and 27,000. And that's the number we have today. As the general said, it could grow. This is really an all-encompassing vehicle from early detection all the way through the most acute PTSD. And our soldiers, these soldiers who really put their lives on the line, they've done the most impossible thing. When we think about the conversations, General Padan brought American generals, British generals and colonels to see what was going on in Gaza City and Khan Yunis. There's a term in Hebrew, mitpa'el, the American and British military officers who had fought in places like Mosul, like Fallujah, who'd fought in Kabul. They were just amazed. They were astounded by the talent, the ability, the success, the limit of collateral damage, of civilian deaths and civilian injuries, the limitation of soldier deaths and soldier injuries, despite this incredibly difficult, dense war area, an urban, dense war area, a battle like has never taken place before because of the density of the population. And these young men that many times General Padan has shared with us, really how this generation has stood up to the forefront. This is a war that was not prepared for. It was sprung upon Israel in the job they've done. And it's our job to make sure that these soldiers are cared for. It's our job to make sure they get the best treatment possible, the best treatment on earth that they truly deserve. And we want to thank each and every one of you for supporting us, for supporting General Padan, supporting the IDF and the MOD in these efforts, that we can ultimately take care of the soldiers who are not only at the forefront of Israel, they're at the forefront of the 21st century. This is the battle for Western civilization. General Padan, would you want to share any closing thoughts, any other ideas before we break with our viewers and with our participants?
So I just want to say thank you and remind ourselves again that we are really making a difference. I don't know if the message go back all over the ocean to the supporter, but it's really been seen all over the place in Gaza Strip at the north, and the soldiers are really appreciated. Not only the physical support that they get, but they know that somebody over the ocean cares about them, that they're not alone, that they are part of the Jewish people, and that message I really echo all over the place with the flag of the FIDF, and I really want to thank each one of you for your support and what you are doing for the soldier and for the future of the Jewish people. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I can be sure that this message, you could hear this message from each soldier that fought in Gaza Strip or serving right now along the border of Israel. So thank you.
Thank you. And we hope to see everyone this coming Wednesday for the next briefing. Wishing in the meantime, everyone a good week. And please God, he'll look after the soldiers, look after Israel, the population, the civilian population, as well as the soldiers who are defending her. Thank you.